Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is a show where your questions make the show. Without your questions, I don't have a show. This is for June 2025. During the last month, a few changes in the studio. No, I did not sell my Gretsch drum kit. I just added 3 Simmons pads to do some Simmons drum covers. I'll talk a little bit about that on this show. And we'll talk about a few other things going on the channel. First off, let me say it this way. Drum covers are dead. You do drum covers because you love playing drums and you love the feedback of the community that you're playing for. So from that perspective, for me, drum covers are great because I'm playing for a group of people that love watching what I do. I'm part of a great drum community. Just came out of Genesis Phil Collins week. And during Genesis Phil Collins week, I put out 4 drum covers, 2 on Simmons, 2 on the big kit, playing concert toms in the traditional Phil Collins way. Great to do that with Kelly Cusimano, KM Can Drum, and Rich Raw Dog Drums, and many others who participated in that. Check out that playlist if you can. But in my quest to continue to have more and more fun with what I do, one of the areas I wanted to have fun with has always been Simmons drums. Now, buying a set of Simmons drums is just not, it's cost prohibitive for me. I can't justify spending, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for a vintage set of Simmons pads and a module to say I have Simmons drums. By the way, I have most of the sounds I ever need for Simmons inside my SPDSX, which I've had for now over 11, 12 years. And they can trigger these Simmons pads. Now, it's a little wonky sometimes, and to be honest, I'm still having some triggering issues with the pads. Not so much the pads, but the triggering from the way the SPDSX gets it. I also have another module, an Alesis module, right here. And this Alesis module is set up for an Alesis drum kit, electronic drum kit. And it comes with all the cabling, short cabling for a very small drum kit, tight, compact drum kit with mesh pads. They work fine with the Simmons, but it has very limited sounds. So I've been using it with the 2 outputs on there for additional pads and using that to trigger claps and snare sounds off of this snare drum with a D-drum trigger. And occasionally I've used it for the Simmons toms on some of the early covers. I've gotten to the point now where I'm pretty much using the SPDSX for triggering the Simmons pads. So, more Simmons covers to come. I do them for fun. I have a blast with them, and there's a lot of challenges, and I'm glad that during the 80s I did not buy Simmons drums. That's all I can say. But if somebody was to give me a Simmons module, I would surely plug it in and have some fun programming it a little bit. But to be honest, most of the sounds I need and the sounds I want, I already have inside this SPDSX. So this is where you're going to see most of my Simmons production coming from, unless someday I buy a module really cheap. Now, I bought the pads pretty cheap. These pads were $40 each, plus shipping. So they came out to about 60-something bucks each. So with that being said, are they worth it? Yeah, they're worth it. Do they feel like a snare drum? No. Do they hurt your wrists? They can. I've had to learn how to play a little lighter and have a different touch with it. But for the most part, the Simmons is more of a gimmick for me to play some drum covers from the 80s. So that's been my goal with that. And I've been having some fun with that. Now, I'm still dealing with a cold. Actually, the month of May was a load of fun. Since April, I've gone on 3 major trips. One trip across the state where I got sick as a dog. This cold thing came on me. Finally got better from the cold thing, went to Washington, D.C. for another trip with my wife and some business, and got food poisoning on that trip. And this past week, I just came back from Boston and Kennebunkport, Maine, and I got the cold again because my grandkids were sitting on my lap before I left, and they got me sick. I'm pretty much over the sick, but boy, oh boy, it just hangs on. The cough and the congestion just keeps hanging on. So don't know what else to say, but I'll edit the best I can out of this thing. All right, I've got a bunch of questions, and I also want to talk about my trip to the Drum Center of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So that was a big deal. I got a t-shirt. I got 2 t-shirts, actually. And I actually have a little video from the Drum Center that my wife shot, and I'm going to voice over some of the vintage drum kits in the museum they have upstairs. So I'll tell you about that visit, too, by the end. All right. The first question comes from Clayton Flanders, 5221. He says, I play bass in the worship team at church, and my cousin plays drums in the worship team at church. A question came up the other day in our conversations that I would like to ask you. What do you look for in a bass player? I have tried to figure out a better way to ask this question, but I end up with a large paragraph, and I know that you are busy. I'm trying to respect your time. All right, Clayton. Bass players. First off, what I look for in a bass player is a guy that can keep time, can play a nice groove, doesn't just play whole notes, but can play little lines and little rhythms that go along with my kick and snare patterns. Or I can play against. I don't always play exactly what the bass player plays, and he doesn't always play exactly what I play. But a great bass player drummer thing has to have that lock. So I'm looking for a guy I can lock with, who's tasteful. Really like tasteful bass players. Now, I'm gonna make a generalization statement, and this isn't always 100% true, but most of the best bass players I play with love playing bass as their first love. They may play guitar, but they are bass players. And there's a huge difference between a guitar player playing bass and a bass player playing bass. So when I play with a real bass player who loves playing bass, those are the guys I love playing with the most. When I play with guitar players that have to play bass to fill in for the gig because we don't have a bass player, that's not usually as much fun because they have a tendency to want to play stuff that bass players don't play. So the key thing with being a bass player is you want to lock in, you want to play rhythmic parts, you want to play the right melodic parts that don't mess with the vocal or mess with the other harmonic things going on in the composition. You want to have great time, and you want to lock it up with the drummer. And if you can do that, you can be a great bass player. My idea of a great bass player, Abraham Laboriel is one of them, top bass players. Lee Sklar. I have a great friend, my friend Steve Matuku, great bass player. There's a guy named down here, Kenny Kasicki, who Kenny's a great bass player I've worked with down here. So there are some great bass players I've worked with in my career. Nashville guys, Gary Lund's a great bass player. He played on the album, the Saved by Grace album. I didn't play with him, but he played on it. Mike Brigardello, another guy, great bass player from Nashville. So there's some excellent bass players. Of course, Will Lee. If you listen to these guys play, they play the right bass lines, the right melodic lines, and they lock it in. That's really what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that can play that stuff. So that's what I look for in a bass player. Do I always find that in church? Not a lot. But then they could say that at church drummers too, that a lot of church drummers don't lock it up. They just play a lot of stuff. So it all depends on what you're playing and what style of music you're playing. But definitely a great bass player is going to be one that locks it up, has great time, and fits in with makes the drummer feel good. when they're playing together. Hope that helps, Clayton. Great. Hope you and your cousin play well together too. All right. My next question comes from Brent3760. This was the Chicago Drum Show weekend. Brent asked me if I was going. I said I wasn't. Wish I lived closer, but I did. I'm not going this year to Nashville either. Here's the question. But if you were able to go, what piece of gear you don't have, drums, cymbals, basically anything that you would be in search for? Oh, yeah. What is something that you would like that you do not have? Great question, Brent. Again, from a guy who has everything I need, I went to this drum shop in Portsmouth, walked around and said to my wife, I said, there's really nothing that I need, you know. One of my wish list ride cymbals, and I'm always looking for ride cymbals, by the way, it never ends, is a Paiste medium light ride traditional. I think I'd like to have one of those 22-inch, but I'd take a 20 today as well. I'm looking for something that kind of goes with the darker side of Paiste. So that's one of them right there. I don't know if you guys saw it, but they just came out with Caropes again, the new Caropes. The word on the street about the new Caropes are they're extremely expensive. They're extremely expensive. I have a 22-inch Carope from 2014 that cost me the most I ever spent on a ride cymbal was that Carope cymbal. I spent $465 for it. The new 22-inch ride cymbal, Carope, 2025, is going for over $1,100. So, is the $1,100 Carope worth the money? I talked to some guys that spend time in drum shops. I talked to some pro players. I talked to some guys at the drum shops. And you know what they said to me? They said the older Caropes sound better, i.e. the ones I have, which I'm not thrilled with. But that just made the price of my Carope just go up exponentially, by the way. And the big thing, I think, is the overpricing of it. Zildjian got rid of the guy that made the Caropes, Paul Francis. Paul Francis was the guy that made the Carope cymbals with Zach Danziger. When they got rid of Paul Francis, they got rid of the Carope line. And there hasn't been a Carope line for about 5 years now, just what's been left over on the shelves. And for them to reintroduce the Carope line is them saying, we got to try to do this again because it was a winner. Guys liked it. But I got to tell you, the price point is ridiculously high. So, not into it. And I wouldn't want one. But I wanted to play one. I did play a 20 when I was in Portsmouth. And yeah, let's just say the people in the shop basically made it clear to me that that's not the cymbal you want. So I'd still like to get a Paiste traditional, medium light ride, 22-inch or a 20 would be fine. That's on my wish list. I wouldn't mind getting another Simmons pad. I may get one eventually. And I'd love to find a Simmons brain that's not a lot of money. That works. But to be honest, those are just wishes. Snare drum wise, I have every snare drum I need. You know, the only thing that would be kind of there's 2 snare drums that I'd like to get back that I've had in my life. 7x14 Noble Cooley Maple. By the way, my friend Scott Hazen got it back, and then he sold it one day instead of keeping it. So that's one of my problems. I love that snare drum. I played it all over my wife's album. The other thing is a 3.5x14 Pearl brass free-floating snare drum, which is how I got my hammer name. I'd love to find one of those and put that in my snare drum collection for that really high-pitched piccolo cranked sound. That or the Yamaha version of the brass 3.5x14, which is way more money than the Pearl, by the way. So I probably will never get the Yamaha, but I may get a Pearl someday. But these are things that are just wish list things. Do I need it? Don't need it. Trust me, I don't need it. All right. The next question comes from Dave Pounds. Dave follows me occasionally. This was on the Leslie Phillips cover I did. Here He Comes With My Heart. One of my first, I think it may have been my first Simmons cover that I released. Actually, the first Simmons cover I did was You Belong to the City by Glenn Frey. Because he's an Eagle, I'm a little bit afraid to release it, so I haven't released it yet. And it was done completely with the sounds in the Alesis, not with the SPDSX. But here was Dave's question. He said, I haven't watched in a while, but I'm glad you're still doing drum covers. You always do a good job. I find it hard to do covers because I enjoy the contact with other people. Playing live, it's fun playing with other musicians. Do you enjoy playing covers or playing with other musicians more? And I thought that was a great question, Dave, because the answer to that question is simple. I would love playing with great musicians if I can find some great musicians where we could play, and we could play in my timetable when I have time to do it, and at my studio or my house, or do only gigs we want to do. See, my problem is with playing with musicians right now is I can't find really good musicians to play with. My favorites are not available in town here. The second thing is I have to play in church most of the time to do it, which has gotten old to me. I did play in church in April, had a lot of fun playing with the band again, and I may go back and play a couple more times this year. But playing in church is not something I want to do regularly. I like doing it once in a while. So playing with other musicians, I love doing, but I've spent a whole career playing with other musicians. So why do I do drum covers? Drum covers lets me play with the greatest musicians in the world that are on the record and get into their headspace. Now, they can't react to me. And that's the difference with playing live. When you play live with other musicians, there's interaction and there's give and take. And I love that aspect of playing with other musicians. That's what I loved about playing in church last month. It was actually a very sparse worship team that day. It was just the keyboard player and me. But we locked it down, and of course the singers. We locked it down and it worked out fine. But I didn't have the bass player moving. And that's a gig where sometimes the bass player plays a lot of stuff. He's young. Young guys play a lot of stuff. Of course, playing in church, you're locked to a click. That's a whole other thing that happens in churches. So, truthfully, I love playing with other musicians, but I also don't miss the egos. I don't miss the need for something out of a gig that one person wants to play lots, one person doesn't want to play at all, that kind of stuff. Been through that. I don't miss the drama. I don't miss being away from my wife on a weekend. I don't miss that stuff. That's the kind of stuff I did when I was young to make a living and to make enough money to pay the bills and to basically have kind of a musical career and say I was doing it, and I was, because I've made money at it. But to be honest, I only want to work with the best musicians, and I only want to work with musicians I like, and I only want to work in situations that make me happy. So if I was recording down here with a bunch of musicians and we were working on an album project, I would love it. If I'm playing at a church once in a while, I love it. It's fun. If I had a little dad band, some great musicians that came here and we played once a week, I could probably deal with it. But I was in a dad band that I had to drive a half hour. It got old for me. So I don't really want to be in a dad band where I have to go to them on a Thursday night and basically, play for 3 hours and drive home, get home at 10 o'clock at night. Don't feel like doing it anymore. For 2 gigs a year, or not even 2 gigs a year with that band, Those are the trade-offs. So do I miss playing with musicians? Yes. But does it bother me that I'm playing just covers? No. Do I get a lot of feedback on covers? I get more feedback playing on covers than I ever got playing with musicians. A lot of times musicians take for granted other musicians. They can't even say, hey, great job, nice playing with you, or anything like that. So I don't miss that aspect of it. I like the idea of I'm part of my thing and you guys interact with me. So I do like playing covers. There's a lot of advantages to this cover world. Of course, Nobody's watching covers. So covers is kind of a dead world. So it's not someplace you want to go if you want to make money on YouTube or something, which I'm not trying to do, as you all know. So great question, Dave. My next question comes from Brent 3760. I had 2 questions today. He said, I have a question for you about symbols. What is your experience with Paiste signatures? They're very intriguing to me. Well, I like Paiste signatures. I will tell you the problem with Paiste signatures and traditionals is their alloy is a little different than the B8 alloy in that it's softer. So my experience with traditionals is they eventually crack. I have a 16-inch Paiste signature thin china that I've had since 1990. I cracked it in probably 2017. And I didn't even realize I cracked it for a year. It just started to feel dead. And then I found there was just a hairline crack on the edge. Bummed me out. I love that. That's my favorite china of all time. 16-inch thin Paiste signature china. Loved it. I played it for years. The crash cymbals are sweet. They sound beautiful. They're beautiful crash cymbals. The ride cymbals are just like all the other Paiste ride cymbals, glassy and cut through and sound great. So I love the signature stuff. I love the traditional stuff. Now, my experience with the traditional stuff is I had a 16-inch traditional crash, extra thin, that came with a dent in it. I bought it at Guitar Center with a dent in it, so I got it for $70. I played the snot out of that thing until one day it cracked. And when it cracked, I played it while it cracked. I still have it cracked. It's still here. I have a Paiste traditional, which is that signature alloy, flat ride. Beautiful cymbal. So do I like the signatures? I do. I think the B8 2002's giant beats are more durable than the signatures. I think the 602s are more durable than the signatures. But the signatures have a Paiste sound that is beautiful. So if you can afford them, you buy them. Great cymbals. A lot of guys like them. I like the Dark Energy ones too. They're made out of that same Paiste alloy. So definitely another cool cymbal to have. I have a Dark Energy 20-inch ride. I call it the Gadd ride. It sounds like a Steve Gadd dry ride. I bought that in Nashville. I bought that at Forks Drum Closet in 2006. Love that cymbal. And I would love to have a couple crashes. You know, a guy who's got the Paiste Dark Energy crashes is Kelly Kusamato, KM Can Drum. He's got some beautiful Dark Energy crashes. The Dark Energy crashes sound better than the signatures in my book. So if you're looking for that range, you got traditionals, you got Dark Energies, you've got signatures. There's very few Paistes that don't sound good to me. The Paiste PST7s, they don't sound as good as the 2002s in my book, but you can put one up with a 2002 and it's going to rock and it'll sound fine. The Paiste 900 series, same thing. They're a little heavier for me. I like thinner crash cymbals. The signature thins are beautiful crash cymbals. The signature fulls, beautiful crash cymbals. I had a friend named Richard Sullivan that had a whole set of them. He lent them to me for a couple weeks, and I was playing them in my studio in New Jersey back in that day, and I fell in love with them. That's when I really said I needed a set of Paiste cymbals. It would take me another 20 years to get a full set of Paiste cymbals. So I love Paiste cymbals, Brent. You know that. So thanks for watching and thanks for the question. See, man, no more questions. All right. Now I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to narrate a video. All right. The first thing in the video that you want to see. This is let's start with this. This is the Port Drum Shop, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I had a wonderful time there. Spent about an hour there. Was amazed at all the stuff they had in the shop. They had a lot of drums, a lot of drum kits. My wife and I had a debate about what drum kit would I want. The funny thing is, it was a Tama Star Series drum kit. That's probably of all the modern drum kits today that I would love to have. I think the Star Series Tama are the best drums that are closest to the Gretsch sound, but not Gretsch. Now, do I think the new Gretsches don't sound good? I think they sound great. I would love to have a Broadcaster kit or a Brooklyn kit. A Gretsch USA custom kit, not so much because I got a vintage kit, so I'm not really looking for that again. But a Brooklyn kit would be cool. But if I wanted to get a really cool looking modern kit, it would be the Tama, maple, right? And I think maple is the one I want more than walnut or babinga. Maple Star Series kit with the inlay. They got inlays on all the drums. They're beautiful. There was a blue kit they had there. Now, while we were there, we walked upstairs and downstairs, tried some cymbals, and we found the drum museum. Now, I will say the one thing I didn't get to see in the store was where they make the videos for the drum shop, Portsmouth. They were doing something upstairs. They wouldn't let anybody up there. So I missed that aspect of it, and I would love to have seen that part of the store. None of the major players were in that day. I think the one guy with the glasses was in, but he didn't say hi. He just walked by and was upstairs. Couldn't get up there. But I did get to go through the museum, and I want to talk about some of the museum drums. The first kit you see when you walk in the museum is a set of Ed Shaughnessy's drums. It was called his Eastern kit, meaning they kept it on the East Coast. And it was a 24 bass drum, a 22 bass drum, 12 by 10 and 8 by 12, 16 by 16, 16 by 18, white Ludwig kit, Shaughnessy sizes. The 12 by 10 was first, 8 by 12 was second. And that was a really cool kit. And then as you walked around through the museum, the next cool kit I came up to was the JR kit. And there was this Yamaha JR kit from the early 80s. I think it was one of the first kits they gave him. It was Tobacco Sunburst. He used it on Rufus Chaka Khan and the Duke Quincy Jones album concerts. So he did. I think it was Rufus at the Savoy. He's on this kit for sure, and I think he was on the Duke album too. Then there was a kit that was a Pearl Very pitch kit, which is rototoms on phenolic shells that Pearl made, and I thought that was kind of cool. And right next to that was a vintage Simmons kit. So nothing was on, you couldn't hit anything, it was all behind things you're just supposed to look at. It's pretty. And then there was a Fives kit. And when we got to the Fives kit, my wife and I are talking about it because this big Fives kit with the 2 bass drums, it had this brown marble color. And that brown marble color, my friend Pat O'Donnell bought for like really cheap when Fives was going out of business. And we traded for some cymbals and a snare drum, that Fives kit. So I got that Fives kit somehow. And then I traded the Fives kit for the little Gretsch kit over here in the corner to my friend Scott Hazen. So the little Gretsch kit with the little maple Gretsch kit in the studio right now, that was part of a trade I traded the Fives kit to. So the Fives kit is this exact Fives kit color, this ugly brown marble color. I did some recording with it. It was recorded very well. I had an 8 by 12, 9 by 13, 16 by 16, 22. I had a Fives bass drum head, fully white, no hole in it. And then one day I got to the studio where I left it, my friend's studio, and he cut a hole in it. I wanted to rip his head off that day. You never cut a drummer's head without asking permission. You could take the head off if you want to take the head off, but you never cut a drum head. He cut the drum head. It pissed me off. I was beyond that day, But this kit reminded me of that. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then we came around the corner, and there was this white Yamaha Octoplus kit. I think it had 2 bass drums, and it had all the concert toms. Early 80s. Very cool kit. And then the tour ended for me as far as the video goes. But there were some other kits down the end. They also had one of those electronic kits, the first electronic drum sets from Hollywood Drums in Italy from the 60s that had the electronic components to it. You couldn't hear it, but that was the first electronic drum kit that nobody talks about because it really didn't go anywhere. But it was done in like the mid 60s. So look up Hollywood Drums. 65 Drums, I follow him. I followed him forever. He did a really good thing on the early electronic drums. So if you want to see it, he's an electronic drum guy. Anyhow, had a great time at the Portsmouth, New Hampshire drum shop. Got this t-shirt. Got another one. So I want to shout out to them. Thank you for the hospitality. Thank you for the t-shirts I bought. And had a lot of fun at the shop. Wish I got to see the studio where you guys do all the cool things. But for the most part, I thought it was a great time. And anyhow, that's it. That's Ask Earl Anything. So remember, your questions make the show. Without your questions, I don't have a show. Thank you for watching, and I'll look forward to doing another one of these as soon as I get some more questions. Everybody have a great day. Bye.
Museum history, say it again. I'm going to go around here.
Oh, you do some of this for me?
Is this Sean?
This is Ed Shaughnessy's kit.
The white one?
The white one.
What's the features of it?
Well, it's like the Tonight Show size kit. So it's got the weird 12 by 10, and he's got an 8 by 12. It's kind of weird. And he's got a 20 and a 22, I think. Yeah, oh, it's a 24 and a 22. And then he's got a 16 and 18 floor tom. And there were some concert toms with it, but he only has the one bongo. It's kind of weird.
This is a whole museum. I didn't know that there was a museum up here.
Yeah. Of course, the Vista Light kits. Let's go this way. This is interesting. On the JR's kits.
Which one is JR's kit?
Right here. It's the Tobacco Sunburst Yamaha kit. It's a beauty. Played this with Rufus and Chaka Khan.
Through the fire,
yeah.
To the limit, to the wall.
Yeah. 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 24, and 22. It's a cool kit. Jeff Oliver's kit. I didn't even know he had it. Oh, one of the early Simmons kits, see? This is the SDS 9, I believe. Yep, it's a 9. I got 3 of these pads now. That's a unique kit. A very pitched, it's got rototoms and shells. And Steph, remember I had this color kit?
I do.
5s.
I never liked it.
I know, it looked like a pizza. It looked like a
Mud.
Tilio's Pizzeria. They used to have that same color on the
Oh, I don't remember that.
on the tables, yeah.
I just thought it looked like mud.
I had 12, 13, 16. This is 13, 10 by 14, 16 by 18. So, pretty wild. Restrooms are down there. That's good to know because I want to need to find them at some point. It's a nice kit, DW kit. This is a beauty. Look at this. A Yamaha Octoplus kit.
Whew.
Oh, they even got the floor tom with the...
This is even bigger than Phil Collins' kit.
Well, just think I have all these drums at home, every size. Except for that 16 floor tom, I got the 18. And I don't have a 24, I have a 22. Only one.
Look at the drum behind there, the old drum.
That's a Radio King.
It must be the 1940s.
Yeah, definitely a 40s. And
Some interesting snares over there.
Yeah, some Black Beauties.
Look at that snare, the embellishment on that snare.
Oh yeah, you're talking about which one? The ones with the Black Beauty carvings on it? Yeah. Etchings. That's the way they did Black Beauties back in the day. Yeah, pretty cool.